Well, hello there. This is John Burton with Poets and Quants. We're going to be talking about the big Idea Bounce competition that's coming up really soon at the Washington University Olin Business School. And to talk about this, we have last year's big $50,000 winner in the house. He's the COO and co-founder of a company called Keye, which recently gone through a pivot, and a recent Wharton MBA grad, Paolo Fornasini. Hi,
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me.
thanks for coming aboard. So, when you won the big prize last year in St. Louis, your basic idea was an on-demand access to expensive subscriptions to digital content and other streaming platforms, largely for consumers. So, how has it gone?
Yeah, that's perfectly right. And I would say overall things are going well. But I think one of the things I want to share today is that the business has definitely transformed quite a bit since then. As you said, we were a relatively consumer-facing service back then, really kind of dabbling in this problem of solving subscription fatigue. So this idea that consumers are just signed up to too many different things. They want to consume more content, but it's just too expensive, and they can add more. And so we wanted to give them a way to pay for things like news articles or information services, kind of one-off, rather than committing to those long-term subscriptions. I think one thing we saw kind of in that search for like product market fit, as we say as tech founders, was that really the audience that needed our product the most was not necessarily consumers. I think there is a problem to be solved there, but really where we were resonating a lot was with businesses, and maybe even more so with smaller businesses and independent professionals. Folks like angel investors or boutique consultants. They need access to a lot of the same subscription services that enterprise teams get access to. Data and information bundles like CB Insights or PitchBook. These are 30, 40, $50,000 a year subscriptions. And there was just a lot of demand for folks saying, hey, I'd love to be able to get a one-off look into this as I'm doing a due diligence on a angel investment, or as I'm helping a client with something. So that's really the direction we ended up chasing. And today we're doing a lot kind of in that realm. We're actually like tackling problems in the due diligence space directly and working really closely with a handful of clients to kind of get more hands-on on that. We're looking at a lot of new exciting technologies in AI. So a lot of things to look forward to next year.
So I would imagine that you've also changed the content that you are giving clients access to, given the new pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, folks can still access the platform, and over the course of 2023, we actually signed up close to 50,000 users. And so we certainly don't want to kind of turn that off immediately. There's a lot of folks who come onto our platform just to read the news every few days, or to explore a new interest. We had partnered with Masterclass for a little while, so there's a lot of folks doing self education. But we're looking into a lot of new partnerships, kind of in that realm. I was, discussing really third-party data, alternative data. We have new products in the works where we want to start building tools for investors and consultants directly. I think one of the challenges that we saw is that we were always just kind of an access layer in between. And so that kind of made it hard for us to design our own product experience. And so we also want to push out our own tools, I think, to our users next year, and then kind of combine those with some of our partners to provide a really, unique experience for them.
You recently added a tool that you call Launchpad. What's that all about?
Yeah, so Launchpad was really about simplifying the experience. And I think that was the first step towards this vision that we had of, okay, let's be more than just a way for users to get onto other websites. Because again, we want users using our product. We think we can make the whole content access experience easier. So Launchpad is a combination of basically our homepage, which links to a tool that sits in your browser bar. And whenever you arrive onto a partner website of ours, it lets you kind of log into that product immediately in one
Hmm.
click. It lets you see how much time you have left in that session. Most of our sessions are 24 hours when you request access. So it's basically just the whole system around helping you kind of keep track and log into all our different partner services.
That's great. So let's go back to a year or so ago and talk about your experience with the Big Idea Bounce. Let's start with why you entered in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think around the time we applied, I was probably either just wrapping up my first year or starting my second year of the MBA at Wharton. And the business was in a relatively early sort of like incubation period. We had the concept. We had even built like a minimum viable product. But we were really trying to figure out like what's the best path for us to get off the ground. We weren't necessarily like quite sure if we were ready to drop out of school and kind of like raise, institutional capital from VC. So we really thought a good middle ground was, okay, let's look at some of the ways that, we can get enough, money and exposure in the door to help us validate the idea. And I really do mean that. Like, I think just the ability to test the idea in a competition in front of judges, share it with a wider audience, that was kind of at that time just as valuable as getting some of the seed money and that we needed to flesh out the product. And so at that time, I will say we applied to a few competitions. This was kind of by far the most helpful, I will say, that we won. And then we were also looking at things like accelerators at the same time. So we were talking to Y Combinator and a few on the East Coast. So it was really just getting those early building blocks in place to get not only the money, but also like the feedback and the validation, because we were really serious about doing this full time, and I am doing it full time now. And I don't think that would have been possible without kind of having some of those testing grounds while we were still students.
Right. And when you came to St. Louis, it was kind of like a return to home because you had been an undergraduate student and therefore a graduate at the Olin Business School. And that helped set you up for a 6-year stint at Google before starting at Wharton. So what was it like to come back to campus and compete?
Yeah, I mean that was a hidden reason I applied for sure. I remember actually hearing about like the old version of IdeaBounce as an undergrad at the Scandalera Center at WashU. So like when I saw the email, I instantly recognized what it was, and I kind of thought, okay, this is my chance to like finally maybe be part of this. Um, so yeah, it was great coming back. Like always great to have, a trip back to St. Louis. The campus has totally transformed, and I assume they're hosting it again next year.
Yeah,
It's actually just like a
absolutely.
really beautiful place to spend some time and like network with other entrepreneurs and really smart people in the space. So the trip itself was definitely a blast from the past, and yeah, it is something I kind of recognized immediately. I wore my Wash U shirt in the audition. So that was a nice touch to it.
What was it? But what was the actual experience like for you?
Yeah, the actual experience of pitching in front of the judges.
Yeah,
Yeah, I will say like that experience is everything from really thrilling to maybe a little bit terrifying also, just knowing that it does go out to a big audience. But I think that was really important because those sort of different pressures, whether it's knowing you're going to be talking to other really smart people, fellow entrepreneurs, that really sharpens your thinking. And again, I think that's a gift that's really on par with some of the prize money that's available. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs sort of get stuck in that idea phase of, this sounds really nice. I might want to eventually try this. When you actually have to go in front of someone, it forces you not only in that moment to be really polished, but also in the lead up to it really think about, okay, how am I going to present this idea? What's my go-to-market strategy? What are all the questions they could ask and things that could go wrong? And so those are all the things that kind of happened in the lead up to it. And in the moment, like all those things definitely came true. I think, you and your fellow judges definitely asked really tough questions. And so I think it seems like I was maybe able to navigate some of those pretty well, but those things do make you, I think, sharper as an entrepreneur. And I did walk away from that actually going back to my co-founder and saying like, hey, here's some things that people are asking about. We need to work on this, etc.
yeah. I have to say, above and beyond just the idea that you had and presented, your self-confidence and poise and presenting it played a very big role in Key winning. And I wondered, what did you actually learn from the experience? I mean, you just mentioned you went back to your co-founder and said, "Hey, here are a few things we need to work on." But what did you learn? I mean, did it help perfect your pitch to others, or
Mm-hmm.
or what?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned this even in kind of the post-competition interview, but that sort of phase of our business was really a time when we were aiming to perfect our pitch. And what I was saying is that I think I went into like a different pitch practice session right after that with another one of our mentors because we really started fundraising about a month after the competition. And so the momentum certainly helped to say like, hey, like these really smart judges kind of believe in us. So like, why won't you believe in us too? But just the practice of going up and facing some of those really tough questions. To answer your question, I think one of the things that we learned is that folks with different backgrounds, like professional backgrounds, are going to think of your business in totally different ways. So if you have, someone who's been a consumer founder, and like, built products for consumers, they're going to think of your product in a very different way than, someone who's worked in media like yourself. And so just being ready for that different array of questions, I think is really important. It continues to be really important for us. Getting to know your audience, and investors are just one of those audiences, right? Like users are a whole another audience. And so I think we even went back and revisited some things like the copy that we put into our marketing emails or the copy that's on our website, because you really have to tailor that messaging. And really us as a business, we're a two-sided marketplace. So we have a lot of stakeholders. We have to think about, the vendors, the content providers that are coming on,
Mm.
the users, the investors. So I think that just kind of brought a little bit of clarity to that as well.
So, Paolo, what did you do with the money?
Yeah, so we're still in a pretty good situation, I'll say financially. I kind of talked about we used the money, I think, primarily as momentum to go and fundraise. So we about a month after the competition started talking to institutional investors, got a few VCs and family offices on board, and kind of raised another pre-seed round middle of this year. And again, I don't know if that would have been possible without some of this initial seed money just kind of signaling like, hey, this is a business worth believing in. But in terms of the actual investment of that, a good chunk of it did go into signing some additional partnerships. So I mentioned, or I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, we partnered with Fortune as well as The Economist around the summer, which were great publications for both our consumer users as well as our business kind of readers. Um, we experimented with a few partnerships as well, a few like CB Insights and Crunchbase, and so that was definitely a big part of the budget. We grew our engineering team pretty significantly. We have a new CTO on board now, and we're also working on the business full time. So we need to support ourselves and kind of look ahead to the growth path in
Yeah.
2024. So I would say primarily engineering and content. And then we've been kind of exploring like different marketing paths. We were doing some pretty successful user acquisition through Google Ads. Now that we're a little bit less consumer focused and more B2B, we're thinking about how do we invest some of that money into sales rather than like scaled marketing.
Well, it sounds like you've made really good use of the money. So now, Paolo, what's your advice for a would-be entrepreneur who's thinking about submitting an idea for this next episode of Big Idea Bounce?
Yeah, well, I would say first of all, don't be afraid and just go for it. I know that's a little bit cliche, but I think there's very little harm in doing that. I think just the exercise of, learning how to tell your story and putting yourself out there, just kind of getting over yourself in that way is very important as an entrepreneur. We've got rejected by, 10 times more competitions than we won. So I think just that mindset is really important. But really, my advice is as you go into it, probably one of the best things that you can do to position yourself for success, in addition to just having, sort of crystallize your vision for the company, is do some validation of the idea as well. And the competition is going to be part of that. You're naturally putting yourself in front of a bigger audience. And so that's going to help. But I think the biggest hurdle that I see, and I've talked to a lot of my fellow entrepreneurs right now, some that are like much more successful than me and some that are just getting started. And I think the biggest hurdle to always get over is take it from the idea stage just into that next phase of validation. Even if that's just, talking to your peers about it. Our classmates were the first people to ever use Key, and that we learned so much from that. And today, like the product is nothing like what it was back then. And I think validation can come in many forms. even if you don't produce like a physical product, which actually many of the people I competed with did. I think don't be afraid to fail. Try to push your idea as far as you can, and don't let the idea that, oh, I need money or I need investment or all these kinds of things, don't let that stop you from just building. I think really try to push the limits of your thinking around what you can do with very limited resources.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Paolo, thank you so much. And I want to remind everyone out there that our next edition of Big Idea Bounce, we're taking ideas from you folks up until January 16th. And then round two kicks in, where we will pick 20 finalists who will be asked to do a 2-minute video pitch, which Paolo did, and he did an exceptional job on, incidentally. And out of those 20, we'll invite 3 teams to come to St. Louis in March. I think the actual date is March 28th, and to actually pitch their ideas in front of 3 judges and do it on camera because we'll make a big show of it, like a Shark Tank show, and put it out there on the web for everyone to enjoy. And incidentally, when you're picked among the 20 who are chosen to do an elevator pitch, you'll also get publicity for your idea and your team in Poets and Quants and elsewhere. So even if you don't get to go to St. Louis, even if you don't win the big $50,000 prize, your idea is going to get surfaced, exposed. So are you. That can do anything, well, will at least help you circulate your idea and get other people interested in it. So check it all out. The Big Idea Bounce with WashU's Olin Business School and Poets and Quants. We're looking forward to seeing your submissions. And who knows, Paolo, we may be talking right now to the next big $50,000 winner. I hope so.
I hope so.
All right. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Thanks for watching.